Erev Tov and good evening, everyone. We're in the Zera Shimshon on Parsha Vayishlach, and we're going to do Os Vav tonight, section 6 in the sefer. This is Daf Shin Lamed Beis. In order to start this piece, we need to take a look at two psukim, one from the Parsha and one from Tehillim. So the pasuk in the Parsha says, it's actually two psukim from the Parsha. Right at the beginning of Vayishlach, the Torah is talking about the fact that Yaakov Avinu divided up his camps. I'm sorry, it's not at the beginning. It's a little ways in. This is in the Parsha. It's Perek Lamed Gimel Pasuk Beis and Gimel. So this is what it says: Vayosem es hashvachos v'es yaldehen rishona. Yaakov put the maidservants, that's Zilha and Bilhah, and their children first. This is right before they meet up with Esav. V'es Leah viladeha acharonim, and Leah and her children came after them. V'es Rachel v'es Yosef acharonim, and then Rachel and Yosef were at the end. He put them at the end of the line. Pasuk Gimel, v'hu avar lifnehem, and he, Yaakov, passed over in front of them. Vayishtachu arza sheva pa'amim, and he bowed down to the ground 7 times. Ad gishto ad achiv, until he approached and reached his brother Esav. So the point of these psukim is to say that when they finally have the meeting with Esav, and this was, of course, potentially a very dangerous meeting, Yaakov set up the families, his sons and their mothers, in a certain order, and then he ran in front of all of them and went ahead of them to meet up with Esav and to deal with whatever was coming. No one knew if it was going to be a good meeting or an attack. So that's what the Torah is telling us there. Then there's a pasuk in Tehillim, in Perek Kuf Gimel, pasuk Yud Gimel, that we're going to discuss also. The pasuk says, Kerachem of albonim, as a father has compassion on his sons, on his children, Richam Hashem al Yereav, so Hashem has compassion on those who fear him. Okay, and we'll see how that fits in as well. So now, let us begin. The Zera Shimshon says, Medrash Rabbah. The Medrash Rabbah quotes the pasuk that we just read, V'hu avar lifnehem, and he, Yaakov Avinu, passed in front of everyone to go meet with Esav. Hadohu dichsiv. This episode is what is referenced in the pasuk in Tehillim, Kerachem of albonim, the way that a father has compassion on his sons. Then the Medrash Rabbah brings in a teaching. Tani Rabbi Chia. Rabbi Chia taught, Kerachaman sheba avos. What does it mean when it says in Tehillim, like a father has compassion on his sons? It means like the merciful one of the avos, of the patriarchs. Ve'ezehu rachman sheba avos. And which one of the patriarchs is referred to as the merciful one of the avos? This is a machlok. It's going to turn out to be a machlokus. Rabbi Yehuda Omer ze Avraham. Rabbi Yehuda says this is a reference to Avram Avinu. So Rabbi Yehuda says when the pasuk in Tehillim says Kerachem av albonim, when like a father who has compassion on his sons, it's referring to Avram Avinu. Omar Avraham, and how do we know Avram is a person who has compassion on his sons? Because in the incident with Sodom, when Hashem told Avram about Sodom and Amorah, his plan to destroy those cities, Avram said, Chalilo lecha me'asos kadovar hazeh. God forbid that you, Hashem, should do such a thing. So Avram, as we know, beseeched and prayed for Hashem not to wipe out the cities. And so Rabbi Yehuda says that shows us that Avraham was the merciful one and the compassionate one of the others. Rabbi Levi Omar, Rabbi Levi says, Yaakov, that it's actually a reference to Yaakov Avinu. When we talk about the merciful one of the patriarchs, it's really a reference to Yaakov. How do we know that? Vehu avar lifnehem. From our pasuk, from our parsha, Yaakov is the one who passed in front of his children in order to stand in front of them and to deal with whatever Esav was planning, and he put himself in front of them. So that shows he took mercy on his children, and he was the true Rachman Sheba Avos. He was the truly compassionate one of the patriarchs. Amar and Yaakov said, Tav de yigabi v'lo behom. it's better if Esav strikes me rather than them. Meaning, if Esav is coming with evil intent, it's better that it should fall on me than it should fall on my children and my family. And so that shows his rachmanas, that shows his compassion. Ad kan Lashono, until here is a quote from the Medrash Rabbah. So the Zera Shimshon asks, Makshim ha'olam, the whole world asks a question on this Medrash, this piece of the Medrash Rabbah. The Bishlama leLevi, it makes sense according to Levi, that was the second opinion. De Ka'amar de Yaakov, who? He is the one who said, Yaakov is the one, Rachaman al Habonim, he's the one who said, Yaakov is the one who took mercy on his children, Nicha. That makes sense, that's all good. So the second opinion of Levi's opinion, which was the second one in the Medrash Rabbah, who says that we're referring to Yaakov here as the merciful one of the patriarchs, that makes perfect sense because he got in front of his children to protect them. Omnam, however, Rebbe Yehuda, according to Rebbe Yehuda, who was the first opinion in the Medrash Rabbah, the Omar Ze Avraham, who said that the compassionate father taking pity on his children referred to Avraham, Ma inyan ze la ze. What connection is there between the incident of Sodom and Avraham taking pity on his children? V'halo mased to Sodom lo hayubanav. The incident of Sodom did not involve his children. Meaning the question that people ask is, okay, the story of Sodom shows that Avram was a merciful person and a compassionate person, and he pleaded for the people of Sodom, but that has nothing to do with a person being merciful on Bonim, Kerachem Av al Bonim, being merciful on their children. Avram's children had no connection to Sodom. So what was Rabbi Yehuda thinking when he said Avram is the person who took pity on his children, and then he brought up the Maisa of Sodom? So that's the question. The Hayofet Torah tirates, the Yofet Torah, this in the sefer Yofet Torah gives the following answer. The Kol Shkein Hu, the Medrash Rabbah is using the concept of a Kal V'chomer here. The Im al Eile Shelo Hayubanav, if on these people of Sodom and Amorah, who were not his children, Bikesh Alehem V'hoya Rachaman Alehem, he pleaded with Hashem about them, and he showed compassion towards them. Mikol Shkein, how much more so, Ilu Hayubanav, how much more would he have pleaded with Hashem and shown even more compassion and strived with Hashem to save them if it did involve his children? So the Yofet Torah answers the question that the Zera Shimshon brought on the Medrash Rabbah, and he says, yes, it's true that Avram's children were not involved in the Maisa of Sodom. So literally speaking, technically speaking, you can't really say, Kerachem Av al Bonim, Avraham showed mercy on his children in the Maisa of Sodom. However, the Yofet Torah says it's a Kal V'chomer. If he showed mercy for these strangers and people who he was not related to in any way, how much more pity and mercy and compassion would he show for his own children? Good. That's where it stands, except the Zera Shimshon in the next paragraph is going to bring an answer that he prefers to the one that was just offered. Uladida nireh, according to our approach, the Zera Shimshon says it would appear de lo kashemidi, that really this question doesn't exist at all. This question never even should have been asked. Da'af Mase Sodom, because even in the incident with Sodom, Hayu Nikra'im Banav, the people of Sodom and Amorah and the other cities could in fact be referred to as Avraham's children. Shahari Pirish Rashi, because look at what Rashi explains, Al HaPasuk, on the Pasuk, HaMechase Ani Me Avraham. This is a pasuk that comes from the incident with Sodom. And before the Malachim go to Sodom to destroy the cities, Hashem says, HaMechase Ani Me Avraham, should I hide, should I conceal from Avraham what I'm planning to do, or what I'm considering doing to the people of Sodom, that I'm going to wipe out Sodom and Amorah and the other cities? How can I not discuss this with Avraham? How can I not tell him? So Rashi explains what was behind God's thought process. Karasi oso av, I called Avraham Av Hamon Goyim. I called him the father of many nations. Va'achshav achris es habonim velo odia la'av, and now I'm going to wipe out the children, and I won't make this known to the father, shehu ohavi, who is beloved to me. Ad kan lashono. This is a quote from, until here is a quote from Rashi. So according to Rashi, we see that when Hashem changed Avram's name to Avraham, because it says, because the Torah tells us he's Av Hamon Goyim, he's not just going to be the father and the patriarch of the Jewish people, he's going to be the father of many nations. Rashi says, what does that mean, many nations? It included the nations that were in Canaan at the time. It even included the people of Sodom and Amorah. Avraham was going to be like an Av to them as well. And the Zera Shimshon continues, Vishapir Maisi Raya. And so it's good to be, it's correct, it's accurate to bring a proof al hapasuk karachim of on the pasuk in Tehillim about a father having mercy, may Avraham b'Sodom. You can refer to Avraham and the people of Sodom, shahare hayu chashuvim bonav, because they were considered like his children. So let's pause here for a moment just to recap what we've covered so far, because the Zera Shimshon is now going to ask a new question and take us in a whole new direction. So the Zera Shimshon introduced this Medrash Rabbah, which talked about the pasuk in Tehillim Karachim Av al Banim, and it brought a machlokes between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Levi about who was the person, who was the patriarch that was referred to as Karachim Av al Banim, like the father who had mercy on his children. Rabbi Yehuda said it was a reference to Avraham, and this is indicated by his pleading on behalf of the people of Sodom. And Rabbi Levi said, no, it's a reference to Yaakov from our Parsha, where he gets in front of his family and his children to protect them. And so the Zera Shimshon brought in a question of, with Avraham, these weren't his children, the people of Sodom. So he brought the Yafet Toah's answer that it's a Kal V'chomer. And then he said, no, really, the people of Sodom were considered like Avraham's children. Of course, they weren't his biological children. They weren't biologically related to him in any way, obviously, but they were still considered his children because Hashem said he is Av Hamon Goyim. He's the father of many nations. And we saw from the Rashi that the Zera Shimshon brought that title included Avraham being like the father of the people of Sodom and Amorah. And therefore, that is an example of Avraham showing pity and compassion on people who were considered banav. They were considered like his children. Okay, so that's the first first subject that the Zera Shimshon wants to deal with. But now he's going to go pose a new question and go in a new direction. Ela'i kasha hakasha. But if you want to ask a question on this Medrash Rabbah, this is the question you should ask. Eich nira mimase Avraham b'Sodom she'iyah machmas rachmanas. How is the mice of Avraham and his pleading on behalf of the people of Sodom have anything to do with mercy and compassion? Avraham did not make a claim on behalf of these people, meaning to save the people of Sodom and Amorah, except through mishpat, except through justice. Avraham doesn't mention rachamim. Avraham didn't say to Hashem, please take pity on these poor, ignorant people of Sodom and Amorah. That's not what happened. The Zera Shimshon is going to show us that Avraham based his plea for the people of Sodom on mishpat, on justice, as we'll see now. Kedichsiv, as the pasuk says, Chalila lecha me'asos v'chulei. Avraham said, God forbid that you should do this, meaning God forbid, Hashem, that you should wipe out all these people. Lahamis tzaddik in Russia, and you're going to kill righteous people along with wicked people. Hashofet kol haaretz lo yaseh mishpat. The judge of the whole world, should he act in a way that is unjust? So the Zera Shimshon says, you see, Avraham was saying to Hashem, I'm basing my plea here on mishpat. Hashem, the plan you're telling me to wipe out all the people of Sodom and Amorah and the three other cities, that's not possible that you would do that because you're the Shofet Kol Haaretz. You have to follow the dictates and the rules of mishpat, of justice, and that would be an unjust act because you would be killing righteous people along with wicked people. That's the question the Zera Shimshon says that we need to ask on the Medrash Rabbah. That's the real question, he says. Ubediktuk acher al hapasuk yuturei tzakol. And if we analyze further on this pasuk, we'll see that everything can be answered. Shahare Avraham lo tova elam midas mishpat. It does appear from the psukim that Avraham based his claim on the midas hadin of mishpat, of justice. V'hamishpat hu shahat tzadik yichya v'harasha yamus. According to pure justice, if you have a Russia who's doing the evil, bad things, and you have a tzaddik who is not doing anything wrong and is only doing the right thing, so of course the tzaddik should survive and not be killed, and the Russia should be killed if his crimes and his sins are worthy of that kind of punishment. But certainly Mishpat would dictate that the tzaddik, just like a judge would say, there's one person who's innocent, there's one person who's guilty. The innocent person shouldn't get any punishment, and the guilty person should suffer the punishment. Heishiv lo HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but then Hashem responded to Avraham's plea, Im emtza b'Sodom chamishim tzadikim, if I find in Sodom 50 righteous people, then asasi l'chol hamakom ba'avuram, I will carry, meaning I will save, I will let live, let survive all of the place, all of the people who live there, ba'avuram, on behalf, for the sake of these righteous people. That was Hashem's response. Hashem did not say to Avram, okay, I will kill just the wicked and let the righteous survive. Hashem said, I'll let everyone survive if there are 50 righteous people in these cities. V'chi kachu hadin, and is that really the law? If we're talking about mishpat and midas hadin, is that the law? Shebishvil hatzadik yichya harasha, that because there's a tzaddik somewhere, the wicked person should be allowed to live? Ve'im Avraham tava shahat tzaddik lo yihiyeh karasha. If Avraham's whole point, his whole claim to Hashem in front of Hashem was that it's not just to treat a tzaddik like a rasha, mitzad midas hamishpat, from the perspective of justice. Memela, nishma, we can learn from this. It comes out from this that we can learn sha'af harasha lo yuchal lios ketzadik, that a rasha, according to the midas hadin, according to law, shouldn't be treated like a rasha. Meaning, the Zera Shimshon is saying, if Abraham's entire claim is based on mishpat, on justice and midas hadin, then how does Hashem's response to Abraham really make sense? Because Hashem says, if there's 50 tzaddikim, I'll save everyone. But that doesn't fit with Abraham's whole claim of mishpat, because according to mishpat, the whole point is righteous people and sinful people, meaning innocent people and guilty people, shouldn't be treated the same. And so if you have to punish Rishayim, don't punish the righteous. And if you're going to save the righteous and reward them, don't include the wicked. Why are the wicked being allowed to survive? It's the righteous who should be allowed to survive. There should always be, the Zera Shimshon says, a clear dividing line, like black and white, between righteous people and wicked people, between tzaddikim and Rishayim. So something seems a little weird here in Hashem's response to Avraham. If Avraham is basing everything on mishpat, then Hashem's response about saving everyone, even the wicked, seems a little incongruous. Next paragraph. Elavadai tzarech lomar, but definitely we see and we need to conclude from here, de bishlama im hatzadik yomos im harasha, that it is correct that if a righteous person is killed along with a wicked person because of the acts of the wicked person, azein mishpat, that this is not considered justice. That's for sure true, and that's what Avraham was arguing, that Hashem shouldn't wipe out the wicked people along with the Hashem should not wipe out the righteous people along with the wicked people, and that is a claim that can be fully based in mishpat. Aval im harasha yichya im hatzadik. However, and this is the novel idea, this is the chiddush, however, if a wicked person is allowed to live along with a righteous person in the schus of that righteous person, az yesh mishpat, then you still can consider that being within the bounds of mishpat. Lefisha legabe midos shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and the reason for this is because regarding the midos of Hashem, see, if it's written, V'richamti es asher arachem, I will take pity on those that I show mercy to. Upirshu Chazal, and Chazal and Masechta Brachos explain what does this mean. Afal pisha eno hagun, Afal pisha eno kedai. This means Hashem says, I will take pity on some people in certain situations, even if the person is not appropriate for me to take pity on, and even if the person is not roy, not fit for me to take mercy on. I'll still do it, even if the person doesn't deserve it. That's part of Hashem's midos. When Avraham made his claim to Hashem and said, you shouldn't wipe out all the people in Sodom and Amor and the other cities, because then you're wiping out righteous people along with wicked people. Al korchach lomar, you are forced to say, you are compelled to say, shetvioso nami, that part of his claim also hayaso was, she'im yesh tzadikim, that if there are righteous people, sheyiyu nitzolem af harishayim, that even the wicked should be saved as well. So the Zera Shimshon says it is inaccurate and an incorrect understanding of the dialogue between Avram and Hashem to think that Avram was saying, I'm arguing on the basis of pure mishpat here, and in the terms of pure mishpat, the tzaddikim should be saved and the rishoyim should be killed, and that's what I'm arguing for. No, the Zera Shimshon says that is incorrect. Actually, it's more subtle than that. There's a fine distinction here that Zera Shimshon says that we need to understand. And that is that Avraham's claim and Avram's argument and plea to Hashem was, for sure, it would be unjust. It would not be mishpat to wipe out the wicked, the righteous people because of the sins of the wicked people. That for sure, Hashem, you can't allow to happen, Avram argues. In addition to that, part of Avram's claim was, if there are righteous people, then even the wicked can be saved should be saved in their merit. And how did Avraham know that that's part of something Hashem would ever consider if Avram's arguing based on mishpat? Because of the pasuk and the understanding of the drush of Chazal of v'richamti es asher arachem. Sometimes Hashem will show mercy and pity on those that don't deserve it. Continuing. Ulefi midoso, and according to Hashem's midah that we described before about v'richamti es asher arachem, Tiretz, Hashem answered, Tiretz lo HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem responded to Avram, im emtza b'Sodom, if I find in Sodom v'chule, etc., meaning if I find in Sodom 50 righteous people, Hashem said, I'll save everyone. V'lochein shapir ka'amar Rabbi Yehuda, and therefore it is good, it is correct and accurate what Rabbi Yehuda said, kerachem of ze Avraham. That when the pasuk in Tehillim said, like a father takes pity on his children, this can be a reference to Avraham in his pleas on behalf of the people of Sodom. Because Avraham's claim, now that we really understand it, was that Hashem should show mercy and pity on the people, even though they were not fitting, not appropriate to receive Hashem's mercy, even though they were wicked, if there would be found with them righteous people. So the Zera Shimshon here, again, we'll pause before continuing, even though there's more that the Zera Shimshon wants to say and analyze on this piece in the Medrash Rabbah, but let's just pause to do a quick recap. So the Zera Shimshon said, the real question on the Medrash Rabbah is Avraham's whole claim and plea to Hashem seems to be based on mishpat. So how can Rabbi Yehuda come along in the Medrash Rabbah and say Avraham's pleading on behalf of the people of Sodom is an example of Karachem Av al Banim, a father taking pity on his children? He wasn't making a plea based on pity and mercy. He was making a plea seemingly totally based on mishpat. So the Zera Shimshon says, yes, that's a great question, but the answer is that we need to look more carefully at the psukim and see how Avraham was making a plea not to kill the tzaddikim, and that was a plea purely based on mishpat, but he was also making a plea to save the rishoyim, if tzaddikim will be found there, to also let the rishoyim be saved because of that, and that was based on Hashem's midah of showing mercy and rachamim sometimes to those who don't deserve it, but these people can receive it because of the presence of the tzaddikim. So now let's continue on the top of the next the top of the next page. And we still need to further analyze this piece in the Medrash Rabbah, but my pligi, what were Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Levi really arguing about? Umay nafkamina, and what difference does it make? Im kerachem av nemar al Avraham o al Yaakov. If the pasuk talks about a father showing mercy to his children, what difference does it really make whether that's a reference to Avram Avinu or whether that's a reference to Yaakov Avinu? Why is that something that Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Levi had to argue so strenuously about? What's really the difference between those two positions? What practical difference does that make? V'yesh lomar, and we can say the Rabbi Yehuda lo boi lemelech miyakov. Rabbi Yehuda Dafka did not want to learn from Yaakov, and in the pasuk that we saw about him getting in front of his children, he did not want to learn that that was an act of rachamim, of a father showing mercy. Why? The shiny hasam, because that situation was different. That was a unique situation. Shahabonim hayu nikim mikol chet. The children were free of all sin. Shahare rubam kikulam adayin lo higia laonas chiyav mitzvos. Because the majority of the children had not yet reached an age in which they were obligated to do the mitzvos. Tahainu liyud gimel shanim, which is 13 years old. Most of the children at that point, when Yaakov Avinu is returning with his wives and his family to Eretz Canaan, were not yet 13 years old. And therefore, they had no obligation in terms of mitzvos. V'im yesh litlos ezechet einu ela b'Yaakov. And if there was anyone who had sins that could have brought about an attack from Esav, that there would be, Hashem would allow Esav to attack this the family. If someone's sins could bring that about and allow that to and have that happen, it could only be Yaakov. It couldn't be because of the children. The Moshe Pirish Rashi, as Rashi explains, Lokach ani yore shema misha hiftachtoni nislachlachti b'chet v'chule. Rashi explains where the pasuk says that Yaakov heard Esav was coming with 400 men, and it says Yaakov was very afraid. So Rashi raises the question, quoting the Chazal, how could Yaakov be afraid? Hashem had promised Yaakov when he left Eretz Canaan that Hashem would protect him, guard over him, and bring him back to the Barak in peace. So Yaakov had absolutely nothing to fear. So Rashi quotes Chazal who say, Yaakov says, no, I do have something to fear because Hashem made that promise before. Now I've been away for 20 years. And of course, I'm only human. Perhaps I committed averos, perhaps I committed sins that made it so that they nullified the promise of Hashem's protection. And so Esav might in fact be coming to attack us because of my sins. But it was Yaakov Avinu's sins, not the sins of the children who were young. Umishum hachi, and therefore because of this, min hadin haya lifnehem. When Yaakov went to stand in front of his family and his children, it was min hadin. It was a legally responsible act. It wasn't based on compassion. Haya lifnehem, that he went in front of them. Kedei shelo yichvu begachaloso, in order that they should not be burned through a fire that was his responsibility, meaning the whole attack, the whole potential attack of Esav could only come about and be allowed if Hashem removed his protection from Yaakov Avinu based on Yaakov's sins. It couldn't be something that the children had done. So therefore, when Yaakov stepped in front of them, the Zera Shimshon is saying, according to Rabbi Yehuda's view, it wasn't an act of karachem av al bonim. It wasn't an act of a mercy, of a father showing mercy to his children. It was an act of justice and din, of Yaakov standing up and saying, I have to take responsibility for any sins I committed and take the brunt of this attack, if in fact it turns out to be an attack, but not allow my children to be punished for something I did. And so you can't prove from this story of Yaakov going in front of the family that he did it and that he was motivated by compassion. And therefore, Rabbi Yehuda in the Medrash Rabbah chose to bring a proof from Avraham's actions with the people of interceding on the behalf of the people of Sodom, as opposed to Yaakov Avinu's actions, which the Zera Shimshon just explained, can be understood and perhaps should be understood as an act of justice as opposed to an act of compassion. So that explains Rabbi Yehuda, the first view in the Medrash Rabbah. Omnam Rabbi Levi Sirale, But Rabbi Levi holds the Adarabba, just the opposite. Davka mishum rachmanas asa kain. It was specifically out of feelings of compassion that Yaakov did what he did, la'avor lifneihem, to pass over and stand in front of his children to confront Esav. Lefi shahayu heim b'sakona yoser mimenu, because Yaakov understood that his children were in more danger than he was. Yaakov's children were in more danger of being attacked than Yaakov was, and we'll see why that is. The Yolif law, midichsiv, and this can be learned from the words of the pasuk, Pen yovo v'hikani aim al bonim. Yaakov Avinu says, I am afraid lest Esav will come and he will strike a mother with her children. The mahu aim al bonim. What did this mean when he said Esav will strike a mother with her children? Alavadai shmami no, but definitely we can learn from here Yaakov hayim misyare, that what Yaakov's real fear was, pen yovo Esav, that Esav might come, veyamis Leah ubaneha, and he would kill Leah and her children specifically. That Esav would come and say, I'm not here to attack Yaakov. Now, Yaakov's not my first priority. I'm here specifically having in mind to attack Leah and her children, and he would kill them. That was Yaakov's real concern. Lefisha ha'olam hayu omrim. Why would this be true? Because a long time before, the world, everybody in the world used to say, Shtei bonim yesh lo l'Rivka. Rivka had two sons, that's Yaakov and Esav. V'shtei banos yesh lo Lavan, and Lavan had two daughters, that's Leah and Rachel. Hagedola legadol, the oldest daughter of Lavan should be, a match should be arranged, and she should go to the oldest son of Rivka, that would be Esav, so Leah should marry Esav. V'hakatana lekotan, and the youngest daughter of Lavan, that's Rachel, she should go to the youngest son of Rivka, that would be Yaakov. So that's how everyone assumed the things would play out, and everyone assumed that's what should happen, and that's what would happen. V'im kain Leah hayasam mizubenes le'Esav, and if so, Leah was the destined wife of Esav. Ela shelo nisratzta bo, but she did not want to marry Esav. Shehayasa bocha tamid, and she used to cry constantly about this idea, this destiny that people were proclaiming, that she would end up marrying Esav. Kemosha Amru Zichronim Levracha, as Chazal say in a Gemara in Baba Basra, Al, on the pasuk of Ve'ene Leah Rakos, the eyes of Leah were weak. The Torah tells us that Leah's eyes were weak. And the Gemara in Baba Basra says, why were her eyes weak? Because she was constantly crying over what she thought and imagined would be her fate to marry, that she would be fated to marry Esav. That's why she was crying all the time. Ubevadai she'Esav hayalo kasima. And certainly Esav, who must have gotten wind somewhere that this girl who everyone was saying was going to marry him, was destined to marry him, as the eldest daughter would marry the oldest brother, he must have been very angry when he heard that she was refusing to do so. And not only that, was sobbing and crying all day long, just thinking about the possibility of marrying Esav. So Zera Shimshon says, because of that, Yaakov had a particular fear, a particular concern that Esav would come and see, where's Leah, where is she, and take out his anger on her and her children. And so that's why he took compassion and stood in front of the children, and that was his mind. He was motivated by the Rachmanis that he felt for Leah and her children and the unjust attack that Esav might perpetrate upon them. That was his real motivation. It was not a motivation of justice along the lines of what Reb Yehuda argued in the previous paragraph. Vizehu, continuing on the bottom paragraph, Vizehu pen yovo v'hikani adafka aim halbonim. And this is why Yaakov said specifically that he had a fear that Esav would come and strike a mother with her children. Dahainu Leah ubaneha. This was a reference that Yaakov was making to the possibility of Esav attacking Leah and her sons. Ve'afilu hachi, and even so, ovar lifnehem, he went in front of them. The Omar, and he said, Mutav de yigo bi v'lo behon. Better that Esav should attack me and not them. Shmamino shemishum rachmanas asakim. We learn from here that he did this out of compassion and mercy, meaning there was nothing in terms of midas hadin or mishpat that would have required Yaakov to say, I'm going to step in front, but rather it was an act of rachmanas and compassion like a father would show towards his children when he protects them from danger and he protects them from a possible attack. The godol rachmanas zeh me'osa shel Avraham. And this act of mercy was even greater, according to Rabbi Levi's opinion, than the act of rachmanas shown by Avraham. Why? Because Avram Avinu was davening to Hashem on behalf of the people of Sodom. Yaakov, meanwhile, was putting himself directly in the path of potential lethal danger when he stepped in front of Leah and her children and the whole family in order to protect them. So this was a greater act of rachmanas, according to Rabbi Levi, the second opinion in the Medrash Rabbah. The ode, and more so, she'oso shel Avraham lo haya ela lahatzil es Sodom. Avraham's action or his attempts and pleas were an attempt to save the people of Sodom, from a punishment that had been decreed against them in the heavenly court. Va'oso shel Yaakov, but the efforts of Yaakov, hoya lahatzil as banov mirogso shel Esav, was to step in front and protect his children from the anger and the violence, potential violence of Esav. Nimtza, we find, shekisha Amar Hakasu, when the pasuk in Tehillim says, Kirachem av al banim, like a father who has mercy on his sons, Richam Hashem al Yereav, Hashem takes mercy, shows mercy to his those who fear him. Ladas Rabbi Levi, according to the view of Rabbi Levi, Ritzono Lomar, what the pasuk means to say is, Shahakadosh Baruch Hu Matzilis Yereav, that when Hashem saves those who fear him, those who are devoted and loyal to him, the righteous who are devoted to Hashem, Af miyad oivehem shehem balei bechira. Hashem will even save them from other human beings who have their own free will. Shehu chidush gadol, and this is a great chidush. The Zera Shimshon ends at this point, but he leaves us wondering, what does it mean it's a great chidush? So we need to explain this powerful, novel idea that the Zera Shimshon just said. Why did Rabbi Levi and the Medrash Rabbah insist upon Yaakov being the one that is referred to in the pasuk in Tehillim? Because Rabbi Levi looks at the pasuk and he says it's talking about Hashem taking mercy on those who fear him, the same way a father takes pity and mercy, shows pity and mercy to his sons. Well, if we say it's a reference to Avram Avinu and his actions interceding on behalf of the people of Sodom, that is a lesser level. That's a lower level. Why? Well, the Zera Shimshon explained. One, Avram did not put himself in any personal danger the way Yaakov Avinu did. In addition, Avram Avinu was talking to Hashem and saying, Hashem, there's a gezerah from the Bezdin Shamala against these people. I'm going to argue on their behalf that you should change that gezerah. Well, of course Hashem can change that gezerah. The Bezdin Shamala that Hashem consults with makes a recommendation, and Hashem can choose to ignore that recommendation. So Abraham was making a very reasonable, so to speak, and compared to Yaakov Avinu, a very minor plea, or a lower level plea, we should say, than Yaakov Avinu. Why? And this is that last point that he made about Bechira, about free choice and free will, because Yaakov Avinu was stepping in front of the children, and he was saying, I'm going to put myself here and daven to Hashem that Esav doesn't come and attack us. Now I'm asking Hashem to change the actions of a human being who has Bechira, who has free choice. That's a much bigger action on the part of Hashem than to ask Hashem to, so to speak, in his own divine realm, choose to ignore the recommendation put forward by the Bezdin Shalmala. For Hashem to get involved with actions here on earth and to say, here's a person, Esav, with his own Bechira Chavshis, and Hashem gives every human being Bechira Chavshis to do good or evil, and now I'm going to intercede and stop him, change his Bechira, so to speak, stop him from carrying out his potential Bechira to attack the family of Yaakov Avinu. That's a much bigger request. Yaakov was interceding and asking for a much bigger action on the part of Hashem than Avram Avinu was. So for that reason and the other reasons that the Zera Shimshon put forward, Rabbi Levi and the Medrash Rabbah chose to go with Yaakov Avinu as opposed to Avram. Of course, we've already seen why Rabbi Yehuda, the first opinion in the Medrash Rabbah, chose to put aside the example of Yaakov Avinu and said that the pasuk in Tehillim was referring to the actions of Avraham and the people of Sodom, who, as we saw before, could be considered Avraham's children. Yasher koach to everyone for participating. Thank you for joining us and learning with us tonight. And